Hi, my name is Jessica, and I'm 14 years old. This year, I happen to find myself in a terrible situation. The idea, which was supposed to be a fun pastime, turned into a real nightmare for me, and as a result, I lost my best friend. It was a Saturday evening. I was sitting at home and scrolling through Instagram when the phone rang. It was my friend Betty, who gave me another crazy idea, as she always does. Hey sis, wanna have some fun? Drop everything and go out in an hour. I'll wait for you downstairs. I wonder what she's up to this time. Me and Betty have been friends for many years, and we always find some adventures together. She's just a walking generator of crazy ideas, which we always turn into actions and have lots of fun. However, this time, everything went differently. I put on my favorite tracksuit and rushed out into the yard. Exactly an hour later, Betty was sitting on a bench near my building as we agreed. But as soon as she saw me, she immediately got up and ran to me. Listen, here is the case. Today, I learned that a new challenge has been started on the internet. So, the point is to spend the night at the grocery store. I've seen a few videos of some guys doing it already, and they say it's fun as hell. I think we should do it. Moreover, we will be the first girls to do it. Well, me and Betty aren't much different from the guys in terms of our behavior. So yes, I certainly agreed to this idea. It was 9:30 p.m., and we slowly walked towards the nearest shopping center, where there is a large grocery market. On the way, we discussed our plan of action. However, Betty told me she took care of everything, and there's nothing to worry about. There was 20 minutes left until the shopping center would close, and according to our plan, we went to the girls' room. Having locked ourselves in the bathroom stalls, we went quiet for a while so that no one could hear us. Soon it was 10 p.m., which means all stores were closing. However, we decided to wait until 11 p.m. to make sure that all the sellers and guards had left, and there was no one else but us in the building. As luck would have it, I forgot my phone at home, and I was terribly bored waiting so long. I was counting every minute to get out, when suddenly the lights went off. I immediately ran out of the booth and began to call Betty in a whisper, but she didn't answer. I instantly panicked and became terribly scared. There was no one else around, and it was dark everywhere. I started to scream loud, "Betty, where are you?" But there still was no answer. In complete darkness, I started to open and check all the booths by touch, but she was nowhere to be found. I was so scared that I almost fainted. My friend betrayed me. She ran away and left me all alone. What a bee! For about 10 minutes, I ran around and called Betty's name in the hope that she was hiding somewhere and would come out at any moment, but she didn't. In the absolute darkness, I could only see the dim light that was coming out from the refrigerators in the market opposite, so I went there. In the twilight, I found huge rows of shelves filled with all kinds of delicious food in front of me. There were no plans to steal anything. We just wanted to spend the night at the market, and Betty had to film us. But I ended up here alone, and I started to have a terrible panic. And then I staged a riot. I pounced like crazy on any food that I laid my eyes on. In stressful situations, I always tend to eat a lot. But here, being surrounded by lots of sweets, I simply couldn't resist. By the time I finished my meal, it was already about 2 a.m. in the morning. With a belly full of food, I suddenly felt tired and decided to lie down and have some nap, hoping that in the morning, the market would open and I could go home. But I was afraid of being noticed, so I decided to hide on the shelf with kitchen towels and napkins. When I woke up, it was dark and I thought it was still nighttime. But when I looked at my watch, I was shocked. It was 11 a.m. Everything was still dark and no one was around. What the hell? But then I remembered. It was on March 8th, and as we all know on that day, all shops are closed. That means I would have to spend a whole day there. Oh no, please, God save me. My mom will kill me when she finds out everything. Then I got hysterical. My eyes filled with tears. I began to scatter, beat, and break everything. You can't even imagine how terrible I felt. I thought I would go crazy. A couple of hours later, I finally calmed down and felt hungry again. And I started to eat everything. Chips, smoked meat, beef jerky, cheese, cheesecakes, chocolate bars, donuts, chocolate cookies, marshmallows. Well, that list could go on endlessly. By the end of the day, I thought I'd explode. I had never eaten so much in my life, and I started to feel bad. Being totally exhausted, I collapsed right in the middle of the passageway and fell asleep. The next morning, the store workers found me sleeping on a huge pile of snack wrappers. There was such chaos everywhere, as if a tornado had swept through the store. It also turned out that I ate, drank, and destroyed an incredible amount of food and drinks, and did damage worth about $3,000. Soon, the police arrived, and then my parents came. I told them the whole truth, and nobody tried to judge me since I am a minor. However, my parents had to pay a big part of the losses. My mom certainly didn't expect such a gift on March 8th. At home, there was a big scandal, lots of screaming and tears. Now I am forbidden to be friends with Betty. Although, she can't be my friend after what had happened anyway. Friends don't do such things to each other. And yes, I promised myself that I'll never participate in any challenges ever again. Hello, my name is Amy, and I'm 25 years old. Or rather, I'm 16 years old. Well, it doesn't matter. The most absurd story that you will hear now is about my first romantic relationship, which eventually turned into a real disaster for me. I was returning home from school and got caught in a heavy rainstorm. Soaked through, I decided to run into some cafe nearby to hide from the bad weather. I wanted a cup of green tea, but when I saw a barista, I must admit I wasn't thinking about tea. All my attention was focused on him. He was so beautiful. OMG, you don't know how handsome he was in real life. Tall, muscular body, nice hair, and his face. He is a model indeed. It seemed to last just for only a moment, but in real, I was sitting and staring at him for 5 minutes. Soon it stopped raining outside. However, I didn't want to leave that place yet. For the first time in my life, I liked a man, and I decided to stay in the cafe to know him better. I started to ask him some questions, and soon I learned his name is Raphael, and that he is 37 years old. He is just a few years younger than my father is. For a moment, I was confused by his age, and an awkward pause took place in our conversation. But then, he suddenly said that I'm too young. The next second, I flushed red with shame, realizing that he was about to expose me. I literally lost the power of speech, and even thought to run away. However, I quickly came to my senses, and my embarrassment was abruptly replaced by an outrageous look and anger. Do you think I am young? I am already 25 years old, living alone, having a well-paid job, and my own car. Raphael sharply raised one eyebrow, silently looked at me, and just quietly said an uncertain, "Okay." We again had an awkward pause, and not knowing what to do next, I told him that my lunch break was coming to an end, and I had to run back to the office where I work. Then I paid for my coffee, grabbed my backpack, and went home. I know, it's ridiculous considering Raphael's age, but since I first met him, he didn't leave my thoughts, and I decided to visit him again. But to attract his attention, I had to change my style and make myself look older. For that, I decided to buy myself new clothes, make me some new hairstyle, and cool makeup. But I didn't have any money, so I decided to tell my dad that I needed to chip in for a gift for the teacher, and also for the upcoming excursion with my class. As soon as I received the money, I went to the store, where I bought myself a solid women's suit in which I looked much older, but at the same time quite attractive, having reincarnated into a new image of an adult woman so much that I couldn't even recognize myself. I went back to the cafe. I must admit, my efforts weren't in vain. When Raphael saw me, he simply dropped his jaw to the ground. Now I know my new look slew. Well done, Amy. Carefully examining me from head to toe, he couldn't resist and said that I looked charming. Well, everything is going according to plan. Soon this pretty boy will be mine. This man. By the time my coffee was made, he suddenly said something that caused my heart to almost jump out of my chest. He said, well, I'm not asking much, but maybe one day. Oh gosh, tell it please. Maybe one day we can meet up. I'm not as successful as you are, but maybe I have a chance. And I just couldn't believe it. Everything worked. He asked me for a date. I just simply sat and stared at him. And he then added, well, I think I shouldn't have been asking this to you. Forget. Sorry. Please enjoy your coffee. When I realized that this guy is mine and finally came back to my senses again, I smiled at him and replied, It's the best cup of coffee I had ever tasted. Let's meet tomorrow. And, oh gosh, you should see his face. It was the moment when you want to scream and jump with happiness, and it was so difficult for me to hide these emotions. I couldn't believe I am dating a man who is 21 years older than me, but I wasn't even guessing what a nightmare I would have to face soon. Our first date went just perfectly. We spent a nice day walking together, talking about things, and laughing, when I suddenly realized how our faces were so close that I got confused for a second. I had never been so close to a man before. I just kept looking into his eyes when he suddenly leaned towards me a little bit more and kissed me. It was the first kiss in my life, but it was just perfect. It was so innocent and felt so amazing that my mind went blank at the moment. I was sure I fell in love with him with all my heart. Soon, we started dating, and it was the happiest time in my life. However, one day, all my lies unveiled, which led to the worst consequences. It was a good day, and we were walking around the city when I suddenly heard someone call my name. But when I turned around, I couldn't believe my eyes. There were my parents. They stood just about 5 feet away from us, with a surprised look and a frozen shock on their faces. It was so unexpected and embarrassing that I wanted to sink into the ground out of shame. To make it worse, I was also wearing my mother's dress, which she threw into the garbage, and I picked it up secretly. I was so shocked and shamed that my temperature immediately rose, and I almost felt like I was gonna fall unconscious. I didn't know what to do. Then I told Raphael they were my aunt and uncle, but he didn't seem to really believe it. Though, it doesn't matter anymore. The next moment, I just run home with tears on my face. I locked myself in my room and stayed there crying till the next day. It was the worst day of my life. Since then, I have never seen Raphael. I believe he spoke with my mom and dad and found out the truth. As for my parents, well, now I have a very strained relationship with them, since I have completely lost their trust. But the worst part of the story is that I loved Raphael, and now my heart is broken into pieces. Hi, my name is Brielle, and I am 14 years old. Because of my own mother, I had to leave home and go on the street, where I met and fell in love with a homeless guy. How did it happen? Just a few years ago, I had a happy childhood and loving parents. But one day, my dad met a younger woman and left us. My mom started drinking. The alimony she received was barely enough to buy some bread, since most of the money she spent went on her drinks. Soon, I was kicked out of a private school, but when I moved to a regular school, children began to mock me there. They constantly pointed fingers at me because I was wearing old ragged clothes, called me names, and spat on me all the time. I would often hide from everyone in the school's toilet and cry there for hours. Soon, my mom met another man, and he moved in with us. They both didn't have jobs, and all they did was drink. They would shout at me, beat me, and lock me in the room without food or water for a whole day. It became unbearable. I was emaciated and often fainted from hunger. I couldn't handle it anymore, so one day I decided to escape through the window when they locked me in my room. For the whole day, I was wandering through the streets, hungry and choking on tears. Then I decided to go to the old cemetery nearby in the hope to find at least some sweets or bread on the graves. Soon, I felt very tired, so I laid down on some bench near an abandoned tomb and fell asleep. But when I woke up in the morning, I found that I was covered with a blanket. But where did it come from? The next moment, I heard some noise nearby, and when I looked back, I saw some guy digging a hole in the ground. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my stomach because I hadn't eaten anything for more than a day. I decided to go to that guy and ask if he has any food, but as soon as I managed to take a few steps, my head started spinning, and with a scream and crush, I fell right on a bush of flowers on someone's grave. In a matter of seconds, I saw a very nice-looking blue-eyed boy above me. Kneeling down on the ground, he put his hand on my head and asked if I was okay, but I just silently looked at him, trying to come to my senses. "Don't be afraid of me. I will help you." And having said that, he suddenly took me into his arms and began to carry me somewhere. About 5 minutes later, I found myself in some small wooden shed with a broken table and an air mattress inside. Also, there was a bad smell of something. Gently, he laid me down on the mattress and handed me a bottle of water. When I drank it all to the last drop, I was able to say that I was terribly hungry. Then he looked at me with despair and quietly said, "I have a bun, but it's stale. Will you eat that? Or I'll go look for something." And then I suddenly shouted, "So give me that damn bun before I eat you!" That piece was so dry that I almost broke my tooth. However, soon I felt a little better and asked the boy to tell me about himself. It turned out he is 18 years old. His name is Daniel, and he has been leading a vagrant lifestyle for 3 years already. Once, his house burned down with his parents inside, and he was left completely alone and with nothing. He found this abandoned shed, which became his home, and works part-time in the cemetery, but his earnings are barely enough to buy water and bread. I also told him about my situation, and he accepted me to live with him. On weekdays, I brought us food from school, which I shoved into the bag and pockets of the malnourished in the dining room. And on weekends, we hunted pigeons and cooked soup with him over the fire. It was fun and cozy together with him. We were like brother and sister, but it didn't last long. Soon, I felt sympathy for this boy. One evening, it suddenly got very cold, and I froze terribly. We sat around the fire for a long time, but when a strong wind blew, we went inside the shed. That night, I lay for a long time and couldn't sleep. I was very cold, and I pressed closer to him. Daniel felt I was shivering and hugged me tightly. I was so close to him that I could hear his heart beating. Suddenly, he made a sharp movement, and the next moment, I felt the warmth of his lips on my face. We kissed for a long time, and I fell in love with him. I was his first girlfriend, and he was my first boyfriend. We thought we were made for each other, and even started making plans for the future. But then everything changed dramatically. Daniel went to the cemetery to do his job, but he didn't return for a long time. First, I didn't give much importance to that, but it started to happen again. And the strangest thing is that he started to bring delicious food home, although he never told me where it was from. And one night, he didn't come back at all, so I decided to go look for him. I wandered for a long time between the graves and trees, when suddenly I heard some voices and girlish laughs. I continued to follow the sound, and soon I saw 2 figures sitting on a bench in an embrace. No way. It can't be. Is it really him? Hiding behind the trees and coming closer, I suddenly could clearly hear Daniel's voice. "Oh my gosh, he's dating another girl. What a sneak." My heart started to beat wildly in rage, but I stood motionless and listened to the voices coming. Soon, they stopped talking and started kissing. Oh no! Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my heart, and a river of tears appeared in my eyes. A few minutes later, I saw them get up and start walking in my direction. Oh no, what should I do? They came closer, and I kept hiding, and all of a sudden, I saw my friend. It was Eliza, my classmate from the previous school. Unbelievable! Are they together? But she's ugly as hell! How's it possible? And then I realized where all the treats were coming from. He dated her for food! Trading me for food. Ha! I bent out of shape so badly that I was about to kill. However, I decided to act in a more cunning way. I quickly returned home and pretended to be asleep. In the morning, I found lots of food on the table again. Daniel was no longer sleeping and was sitting outside the shed. But as soon as he saw me, the first thing he said was, "Brielle, I have to tell you something. We can't be together any longer. I love you, but you were too beautiful for me, and I want you to leave." And then I became nuts. "So you dare to drive me away for that Gorgon?" Then I told him everything I know and everything I think about him, spat into his face, and left. All day, I wandered around the city, hungry and crying. And in the evening, I decided to go home. There, I found my mom left her boyfriend, and now we live together. Sometimes, I think to go and burn that shed, but fate had already taken away his house, so let it be. But what would you do if you were me?
Hello, My name is Pierre. I'm from Lyon, France, and I'm a street performer. But I'm not a street musician or anything like that. What I do is far more bizarre. Nature gave me unusual superpowers, which I successfully demonstrate to the people in my city. But no matter how cool it looks from the outside, I've suffered from this unusual condition my entire life. I'm sure it'll be fun for you to find out about me and the things I can do, but please, never try to repeat this. My crazy lifelong story dates back to childhood. Wait, no. My story starts actually from the time before I was not even born yet. While still being in the womb of my mother, I had already begun to cause her big problems. Already in the 4th month of pregnancy, my mother began to have serious health problems because of me, and she would constantly visit a doctor. And from the 6th month until the end of the pregnancy, she lay in the hospital under the supervision of doctors. I just started to eat her from the inside, in the truest sense of the word. It sounds like a horror movie come to life, but I'll explain. While I was growing inside, I required 10 times more vitamins and nutrients than are normally needed. Because of me, my mother had to eat abnormal amounts of food, and it still didn't help the situation. I had been sucking all the necessary vitamins from my mother, and as a result, she had to constantly be given intravenous fluids and other medicines that helped her maintain her life, while the little monster was punching and kicking her from the inside because of the constant hunger. By the time she had given birth to me, she lost about 66 pounds. She also lost all her teeth and hair, and she looked very bad. You think that might be the end, but there's more. Since I was born, I started to cause even more problems for my poor parents. My mother barely remained alive after being pregnant and giving birth to me. I was born a big baby at 26 pounds. Doctors said that I had an abnormally big stomach and that I had very little chance to survive. But here I am. Now, my life revolves around survival, and the amounts of food I have to eat will shock you. The number of meals that I needed as a baby was ridiculous. Besides the fact that my mother was breastfeeding me, she also had to buy 15 to 20 cans of baby formula every day. At the age of 5, I had to eat about 7 adult servings of food at one time in order to feel full. But in about an hour, I would feel hungry again. This was a real disaster for me as well as for my parents too. At the age of 10, I turned into a real monster, and I would eat everything I could find. My parents were not able to keep me anymore. It's not like they're poor. They both receive a salary sufficient to take care of everything. But to support a child like me, they needed to be millionaires. Because of me, they got into huge debt, and there was no end to it. As I got older, the problem was growing, and the situation was getting worse and worse. One day, my parents got tired of me and just left for a few days to their country house. I was about 16 years old already, I think. Of course, they left some food for me, but not so much. As soon as they were gone, I ate all those meals just at once, and for the rest of the day, I was starving. By the evening, I could not stand it anymore, so I went outside to look for something to eat. I went to the garbage bins and started to search for leftovers. I didn't find much food there, but on my way home, I found somebody's cat. It was a thoroughbred, well-groomed, fluffy cat with a flea collar. He was sitting near the entrance, waiting for someone to open the front door. I opened it for him, and I took him with me. Well, I won't tell you what happened next, but it was tasty. But just wait, that's probably not the worst thing I've done when it comes to satisfying my hunger. At the age of 17, I was kicked out of my home. My parents could not afford to keep me anymore, and they were simply tired of me, and I don't blame them for that. I know I'm a monster. For a couple of months, I led a vagabond, bum-style life, and I was begging for money and food. Besides that, I was constantly hanging out near the trash bins and eating everything just to fulfill my bottomless hole called a stomach. Because there was never enough leftovers in the trash, I would eat paper products, pieces of wood, and even plastic and metal. But soon, I realized that I couldn't live like that any longer, and so I decided to join the army, where terrible trials awaited me. After a year of stray life, I joined the French army, but unfortunately, I did not serve there for very long. Because of my insatiable appetite, I never had enough army rations, and I often had to carry out the tasks of other soldiers in exchange for their portion of food. But even that did not save me, and soon I was hospitalized with severe exhaustion. In the hospital, doctors immediately became interested in me, and I soon became the subject of a medical experiment. In addition to being given 15 servings of food for lunch, I was also periodically fed live animals. I could also swallow an entire eel whole. When the Army general found out about my abilities, he immediately decided to return me back to the Army and use me for military purposes. Soon, I was employed as a courier. But on my first assignment, I failed. I was instructed to swallow a wooden case, inside which was a particularly important document. Of course, I performed the task perfectly well, but since I didn't know German, I was later captured outside Landau. As a result, I never delivered the document to the French colonel as I was instructed. The Germans inspected me and didn't find anything suspicious, but they began to interrogate me. I didn't betray my general and said nothing. Later, I had to remove the wooden box with that document inside from my own excrement and swallow it again so I wouldn't get caught. Since I didn't tell them anything during interrogations, I was kept as a prisoner for a week and I was beaten badly during that time before they finally released me. After that incident, I never returned to the Army. Instead, I went back to vagrancy. Sometimes I would get lucky to catch some wild animals, and these were a real feast for me. If I was very hungry, I would just eat them raw. But if I could manage to find some patience, I would go deep in the park, hide there, and make me a nice barbecue on the fire. Later, I decided to build a slingshot and shoot pigeons, which served as a good snack for me. Generally, I somehow managed to survive in urban conditions, but I needed to get closer to a less normal life, and then I came up with the next idea. I became a street performer, showing people how easily I could eat all kinds of unnatural things. I would demonstrate swallowing spoons and forks, all kinds of strange things like pins, keychains, wallets, lighters, broken glass, and even knives. The show from eating 3 buckets of apples at once enjoyed particular success. I just threw them in my mouth whole, one by one, without biting or chewing. Yeah, I'm a big guy, and I can do it. Over time, I got a lot of fans, and I even started to earn a good income on this. Once, someone brought me 1/4 of a cow and asked me to eat it in public for a pretty good reward. I must say, it was not difficult at all for me. On the contrary, I earned a lot of money and even satisfied my inhuman appetite. Since then, it had become a custom, and my fans themselves periodically prepared various crazy tasks for me, which I always performed perfectly. But soon, the time came for a new stage that I had to go through. One day, I became very sick. I guessed that some objects got stuck in my stomach and the pain became unbearable. And for the first time in my life, I had to go to the hospital for help. When the doctor saw me, he was amazed. It was a miracle that I was alive still because I had lived with that problem for years. They also found out that I have a rare form of the disease that is the cause of my constant hunger. I underwent serious treatment, and over time, my health started to improve. But soon, I plunged into another problem. Although in the hospital I was fed large quantities of food, more than ordinary patients, I still did not have enough. The doctors tried to fill me with all kinds of medicines and nothing helped with my incredible hunger. So one night, I had to escape from the department in which I was lying and went searching for something to eat. I made my way to the kitchen and ate a whole week's supply of food. Later, the staff at the hospital found out that I'm the one that ate all the food, and since then, the kitchen was under guard until the end of the stay in my hospital. The next night, I jumped out of the window in my room, and I went to the zoo. There, I found plenty of food. I ate so much there that I thought I would burst. Soon, the zoo was also under guard. In about a week, a newborn child disappeared from the hospital and suspicion fell on me, no doubt. All the medical staff had enough of me, and they immediately sent me to a mental hospital. And that's where I am now. I am locked here and closely watched, with no way to escape, and each day could be my last because of my insatiable hunger. What do you think about my story? Am I a terrible person for things I have done, or do you think it's not my fault? Could I have done something different? Tell me in the comments.